Hey guys, welcome back to the Falcon Project on Calico's Garage. And this is episode number 20. Can't believe that we're on 20 already, but we are. In this episode, we are going to be working on doing the fuel system. We'll be creating some AN lines and also running some AN lines from the transmission to the transcooler and various other things. We are kind of really in the home stretch here. There's not that much left to do. Come over here and look at the board. Really, aside from the plumbing, we just have the turbo hot and cold sides that we have to do and the fuel system. And then that's really all that we have to do in order for the car to be functional. Everything after that is just kind of body work, making it pretty. But as far as getting it working, we just have to plumb the fuel system, plumb the transcooler. That's about it. So we're definitely at the end of this build, or near the end, I should say, not at the end. But it's definitely been a long journey so far. Not that much left to do, so let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need to do is turn on a light. There we go. That's better. So I've got these adapters because the lines going into the transcooler are 8 AN, but the lines that I'm actually going to run and the fittings coming off the transmission are only 6 AN. So I've got these adapters that just screw right on. Simple to do. Go. Nice and tight. Now we can make the lines to connect from the transmission to the cooler. So for the lines that we're going to be running for the transcooler, we're going to be using what's called AN lines. And there's different types. For this particular kind, it's just rubber hose, and then it has this braided sleeve on it that's kind of got some metal in it. And I guess you can use them for a bunch of different types, but the other kind is called PTFE. I'll show you in a little bit when I get to working on the actual fuel lines, but the sleeve is the same, but the inside is kind of like a white plastic material called PTFE. I know that for my 3D printer, there's also that type of filament that you can use. It just has like a different type of property, and it is resilient to different types of fuels like E85 and stuff like that, which I guess can break down this type of hose. So what we'll be doing is putting these connectors on it like this. So like this is a 90-degree. And to hook these up, these particular ones, it's kind of an easier process. You just unscrew this part, and it has these two pieces like this. You take this connector and you pretty much just slide it on here. And it's kind of difficult because it just is. And what you want to do is slide it until it gets kind of seated up against the base of these threads. They make different types of tools that you can use that like fit into your vise, or they kind of look like a vise themselves, where you put the end on and you twist it and it like really presses it on, kind of like a hydraulic press kind of thing. But those cost quite a bit of money, and considering I'm only going to be doing this one time, hopefully, I'll just use my hands and push it on here. You just kind of have to push and twist, and eventually it'll go on there. Once you get the fitting on the hose, which does kind of suck and takes a lot of effort, then you come to your vise. You've got to get these aluminum jaw adapters for your vise so that it doesn't mar the aluminum, because these are aluminum fittings. And then you've got to get the aluminum wrench. So you tighten that up in there, and then it's just a matter of twisting this on till it's tight. And then as you're tightening this down, it's actually going down into the hose. And with any luck, it will not leak once it's fully seated. Okay. There we go. So that's one end done. So I'm going to attach this to the transmission and then measure how long the line needs to be, and then we'll go to the next step. All right, so once you've got the hose marked where it needs to be cut, which I just put some tape on it. You want to use tape so that it keeps this braided line from fraying when you cut it. So what we'll do is just use an angle grinder, cut it right in the middle of this tape, and then it's just another matter of putting the other end, which will be a straight fitting, but you put it on just the same as this. So I won't bore you with that because it's just a lot of repetition. And I'll go ahead and do that, and then I will put the lines on. So I've got both the lines created here. So now it's just a matter of connecting them and tightening down the fittings. Pretty easy. We'll start with the feed. This one's the feed. There we go. Okay. Transcooler is plumbed. Okay, the next thing we've got here is got to connect these AN adapters to the fuel rails. So 2 in the front, 2 in the back. They just screw in pretty quick and easy. And then that will give us the connectors we need in order to connect the fuel lines once we get those made. 1 down, 3 to go. Okay, so those are connected, just like that. And my dilemma is I'm not sure where to put the fuel regulator. I was originally planning to put it in the back, but space is a bit limited there. A lot more than I was expecting it to be. What I'm thinking about doing, so I was going to have, originally, the fuel lines were going to come up, go through the front, come out the back, and into the regulator. But I think I might do it backwards. So come out the back, go through the fuel rails this way, and then come out to the regulator. I might put that right there. Or somewhere like that. Maybe here? No. So I have the 2 inlets, so the lines going through the rails are on either side, and then this bottom is a return which goes back to the tank. It would go good there, but that's where the hood hinge goes. So I'm thinking right here might be about the only place to put it. That'll be below the hood. That might work. Or it has this port on the back. I could open that, have it go, well, no, that's not going to work either. And mount it on here. I absolutely could. But then that return line is going to be a little wonky with the routing. That would go good right there, though. That would go really good. I think I'm going to put it there. Yeah, because that'll be kind of out of the way. And then the fuel line can probably just go right down through there and then straight back. Okay, we have a plan. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to mount this up, and then I'll start making the fuel lines. Okay, got the fuel regulator mounted. Nice and solid. I think that's going to work perfect right there. And then, like I said, I'll route this one over to here, this one down to here, and then the return, I'm just going to snake right down through there, and then back to the tank. That will work perfect. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, I think I will mount the fuel pressure sensor adapter here, which is just going to stick out about this far, and then I can plug in the fuel sensor, and then I can attach the fuel sensor line to that. And then aside from the wideband sensor, which I can't install until I get the turbo, that will be the entire Terminator X wired up. So let me go ahead and get that adapter thrown in. So I'm at the point where I'm making the fuel lines now, and I'm using the PTFE AN lines. I did some research. I found out that the AN in AN lines actually stands for Army Navy, which I guess was a standard that they came up with in like the 40s for fuel fittings. So that's where that came from. And the PTFE is, I'll put it on the screen because I can barely say it when I'm reading it. So, but it's a big fancy chemical sounding word, which turns out is just Teflon. So as you can see, the inner lining on these is just kind of like a white tube, which is Teflon. Very smooth. It is chemical resistant, which is why it's good for fuel lines. My nose is dripping like a faucet because it's like 20 degrees in here. But anyway, the PTFE lines get put together a little bit differently than the regular rubber hoses. Let me show you how these work. I actually prefer these better, mainly because they're easier to put together. That's kind of the only reason. But let me take the fitting apart here and I will show you the difference. So these have the two parts like the other one did. Then they also have this little metal ferrule, I think is what it's called. So the first thing you actually have to do is put this on, because that screws on later. There we go. Slide that back up. Okay, so now we'll put this on. Kind of misshapen it a little bit, but I'm sure it's fine. There we go. So that just pushes on. We'll slide this up tight up against that. And then this gets pushed in until it bottoms out. Just like that. And then you just take this and slide it up. Screw it together. And I'm going to go stick it in a vise because that's way easier. I will be right back. Okay, here we go. Got both ends put on. Now I'll go put it on the car. It's by no means a quick process. There we go. This one should be a little easier. So I can do that. Then drop everything. One line down. This next one I'll probably have to wait. I was going to hook up the fuel pressure adapter to let me run the fuel pressure sensor here. But as it turns out, I haven't received it yet. It's not going to get delivered until tomorrow, so I can't do that. What I can do is get the two back parts done that go into a Y, because coming back from the pump, it's going to be a single line that comes up and then it's going to split into the two that are going to run through the rails. So let me work on those. I've got the tank, well, the fuel cell mounted. It's nice and secure. So now I'm going to hook up the AN lines from the fuel cell here to the first filter, which is here. Then it'll go into the pump, and then the second filter, and then I've got the rest of the line from here running up to the front. That's already set up. It's just kind of a lot of the same stuff, you know, hook up the ends, screw them on, you're done. So let me go ahead and get this one measured and cut, and then we should have the fuel system, or at least the lines, pretty much buttoned up. The only other piece I have is the return line. I've got it so far plumbed from the bottom of the regulator to the flex fuel sensor, which I'll show you in a minute. I got that kind of up near the front, so the only other line I would need to run after this one is the return line from the back side of that flex fuel sensor up to the back, and then I'll have to drill a hole somewhere in here, and then it'll come and connect right here for the return. It's just kind of a continual cycle. The fuel comes out here, goes around up to the front, goes through the rails, and then comes through the regulator back into here. So it's just continually cycling, and it gets set to, I think, 60 PSI. So yeah, so let me go ahead and get this line measured and cut. We'll be one step closer to getting done. Yeah, that'll work. Right about there. Yeah, that'll work. It would be a lot easier if I could just connect this 90 and then just have a straight shot, but this parachute mounts in the way and I don't want to mess with it. So yeah, that's how it's going to run. It'll just have to make a little loop. No big deal. All right, let's go cut it. All right, let's see if this works. No, it's still not gonna fit. Lovely. Well, No one ever said it was a quick process. I just want to make sure everything's tight though. I think that is good. At least as good as it's going to be. Yep, that'll work nicely. There we go. We've got some downhill to it. Okay. I think we're good. All right, guys, we've reached a very exciting part of the build, or at least I think so. I got all of the fuel lines that I'm able to make. I'm still waiting for a few parts to get delivered from Amazon. They should be here Wednesday. But in the meantime, while I was kind of cleaning up in here, I decided to mount up the wheels. And I must say they are looking pretty fantastic. To get the backs on, kind of like I was thinking, I just had to take apart the bolt here for the leaf springs on both sides and then just drop it down low enough with a jack to pop the wheels on, get them bolted up, and then just jack the rear end back up and put the bolts back in. And as you can see, they fit nice and perfect in there. Man, that looks good. I did have to do a little more hammering in here because this was sticking out kind of. I didn't want it to hit, so a little more clearancing. And I rolled the lip as well. And unfortunately, as I was doing that, I discovered that this section was pretty much just made out of Bondo because, as you can see, it's just completely rusted out. Oh, look, there's some more Bondo popping off there. Little chips of Bondo. So I went ahead and just cut it. This part here is nice and solid. And then it's kind of the same on both sides. I don't know if you can see it over there. But what I'm going to end up doing is probably just cut this off, you know, outside of the rusted part so that we get to good metal. And I'll just weld in a patch on both sides. I'm not sure about what to do back here, because as you can see, this whole part here is completely rusted out. It's supposed to go like this and attach over here, but both sides are rusted out. So I'm not sure if I'm just going to leave it like that or what. So that will be a problem for another day. I'm not going to worry about it right now as I continue picking. On the other side, you can see it's kind of the same over here. So I'll have to patch that as well. This side, the paint isn't quite as good. It's just kind of peeling off. But before I paint the car, I'm actually going to completely strip all the existing paint off. I've got one of those, just kind of a big abrasive wheel that just takes paint off, but it doesn't really mess up the metal. So once the car is totally done as far as functionality wise, and it's just at the point where it's ready for body work and paint, I will worry about that. There's only a few more things that I need to do in order to get the car actually running. And the first important thing is it needs a drive shaft. So now that I have the wheels on, I can actually lower it down, and it will be the first time since I pulled it in here that the car has actually been on its own wheels and not on the quick jacks. So I'm going to set you down. We're going to lower it down, see what it looks like on its own new shoes. Let's go. Wow. That looks pretty darn good. Hell yeah. I could not be happier. I love how the back wheels are tucked up in there. Exactly how I wanted. It's got plenty of room for clearance. Oh yeah. It's weird to see the car that low. I'm used to it being like teeth level. I'm gonna get in it. It's kind of hitting me how real it is now. Yeah, this is awesome. Okay. Enough staring at it. I'm going to... Wow, how am I going to do that? Because I need to measure for the drive shaft, which means I need to get under the car. Wonder how I'm going to do that. So I have to measure from the transmission to there, and I am not seeing how I'm going to be able to squeeze under there. Let me think about that for a minute. Okay, that was actually easier than I was thinking it was going to be. What I ended up doing is I raised it back up, put the wheel roller things underneath, which, you know, gives me like that much height, but it's still technically sitting on the ground. So the shocks and everything are under load. And I just moved this jack out and curled underneath and measured for the drive shaft. So I'm going to go ahead and order that. And then once that arrives, I don't know how long that's going to take. I figure a couple of weeks maybe. Once that arrives, I can get that installed. Then I can start putting transmission fluid in, because I can't put it in now because it'll just start coming out the tail shaft. And then I can start working on the turbo, which I was kind of playing around with it a little bit yesterday. And I mean, this is kind of the area that it has to go in. I mean, there's just really no other way for it to go anywhere else. I mean, like, I guess it could technically go up here, but I want to be able to close the hood, and with it up there, I'm just not sure if that's possible. So I'm thinking it will have to go in here, and obviously this is where it's going to connect to. And then I guess I'll just have a 90 that goes over. So I'm probably going to have to trim this down flat with the frame, which is not a big deal. What I might actually do, rather than trim it, is just cut here and then fold it over. That way I don't lose the pinch welds on the other side. But as long as it's flat, because then if the pipe comes out here, it can actually rest on here. It'll give it some support, so I don't have all the weight of the turbo hanging off of this manifold and the pipe, which the turbo itself, I'm going to say, is probably like 30 pounds. It's definitely not light for as small as it is. I think it's a 78 millimeter. I know there's obviously smaller ones, but that was the recommended size for the power goal that I was going for. So yeah, I'm thinking it's going to have to go there. And I would like to figure out some type of brace for it. You know, with the pipe sitting on here, that's going to give it some support, but I still really don't want all that weight just kind of hanging out here, because I'd imagine with bumps and stuff, it might, you know, put some stress on that pipe. There is this in here, which I might be able to make something to tie off onto here. I don't know. I'll figure it out. I've got plenty of time, you know, the rest of the winter to mess with it. And then also the intercooler, which I was thinking of putting under here, kind of tilted like this, but now that I see it on the ground, it does look like there's plenty of room, so I might just mount it. It's only about that tall. I think it's like 6 inches tall, so I mean it would only hang down to there, so that might actually work. But once again, I got plenty of time to figure that out. So I'm going to go ahead and end the video for today, and I will pick back up with you guys once I get the remaining parts for the fuel system to get the rest of the return line run to the tank, and I will see you then. All right, it has been probably a week and a half or so, and I got the drive shaft in. I had to end up going with an aluminum 4-inch drive shaft due to the length of the space between the transmission and the differential, or the third member, and also due to the RPMs. The longer the distance, or the longer the drive shaft, there is, I forget what it's called, critical speed or something like that, where when the drive shaft gets to a certain RPM, it starts to have this really bad vibration that can actually cause it to break, basically. And when it breaks, it's bad. So I wasn't able to get just like the standard drive shaft like I was hoping, which would have been just like a 3-inch, I think. I was originally going to get it from Strange, but due to the length, they said they couldn't do it. So they recommended Precision Shaft Technologies, which is in Florida, and they offer aluminum and actually carbon fiber too, but those are like crazy expensive. So I ended up just going with a 4-inch, which is this. It does have the Strange yoke on it, which is what they recommended because it's really good. But it's very light. I mean, it probably weighs 10 or 15 pounds, as opposed to just like a steel drive shaft, which would probably weigh that same size. I would imagine would probably weigh like 35 or 40 pounds. Like this whole drive shaft weighs way less than this turbo, just as an example. Like this thing is probably twice as heavy as this, mainly because it is all cast. I think this is cast aluminum, this part, but this is cast iron, so it's very heavy. But I'm going to go ahead and see about getting this drive shaft put in, and hopefully it goes easy. Let's find out. Okay, drive shaft installed. All right, it is the next day, and I've been trying to figure out where to put the turbo. After a little bit of figuring and measuring and stuff, I think the best location for it, or I guess best and easiest location, is going to be right here. That way I can just come right out here, bend up, over, and up. So it'll just kind of be a short run for that exhaust connecting pipe. And then as far as bracing it, I know that a lot of people just kind of hang the turbo off the exhaust, which works, but when it's out kind of far like that, it's going to bounce, and that's going to put a lot of stress on the pipe and especially the welds. So I'm going to brace mine, and I've been trying to come up with a good way to do it. I did some looking online, and there's a piece called, I think it's a Maven bracket or something like that, and then of course a bunch of knockoffs which connect to here on the bottom of the turbo. It's kind of just like a bracket that connects, and then well, not this exact part, but you would get a 10 millimeter, not 10 millimeter, AN10 connector that screws into the bottom, and then on the side, or at least on the Maven one, it has on both sides a 1-inch area that you can weld a 1-inch pipe or tube to. And that would be really cool, but in order to do it properly, you've got to have some kind of a mandrel bender, which I don't have. And otherwise, you're just stuck with straight tubes, and that's really not going to work in this situation. So the other option, which I think I'm going to go with, is a bracket that looks kind of like this. So this is what mounts here and here that holds the two halves of the turbo together. So the bracket I saw will connect like this, but then it has a part up here with a hole, and then you connect a heim joint. What I'll do is I'll put a picture up here to kind of show the part that I'm talking about, and then this is what it looks like when it's actually mounted, so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm going for. So I'm going to have connections in these 3 locations here. I don't know if I'm going to make a plate or just have some round tube coming off. And then I'm going to have some solid rod. I think it's 5/16 solid rod connecting from these 3 locations up, kind of at a triangulated point. And then that heim joint will connect there. And it'll actually hang, or the turbo will actually hang from that. So it'll provide it a lot of good support. I'll probably put some, what are those things called? Those little metal tabs that connect between the metal to hold it together. Anyway, I'll probably put some of those on there to make it more sturdy. I don't know if these 3 coming out like that will be enough. I might have to put something that maybe mounts to here, or something over here to also, or down, I don't know. I'll figure it out. But I've got the heim joint on order at Summit. I also ordered some stainless steel exhaust tube. So I've got the 3-inch to connect from here to here. And then the actual exhaust side, I've got 4-inch. And I think with that, what I'm going to do is I will connect, it's obviously going to come out here. And then I think I'm just going to have it come straight down and then straight out. So it'll kind of just be like a big S, and then the exhaust will kind of exit right about here. That way it clears the tire. I was thinking of having the turbo, instead of like this, turned this way, and then have the exhaust kind of come up and over and out in this area. But when I was testing with the tires, turning it left and right, it was getting really close, and I didn't want to play that game. So I think this is how I'm going to do it. I think that'll work out really good. And then the intercooler I'm going to have just mounted right here. And the pipe for that's probably just going to go underneath, connect, and then come out. And I'll probably have it come back in. I'll have to drill a hole like in this area to come out to connect to there. And then the wastegate, I think once I get this part here done, I might make the wastegate like right here in this area. But I will have to see how that goes once I get the piping and everything kind of mocked in there. So with that being said, I'm going to end this episode, and we'll pick up with the turbo installation in the next episode. So if you like what you've seen, go ahead and hit that like button. If you really liked it and you want to see more, hit subscribe and click the bell to be notified when I release the next video. Like I said, the next video is going to be installing the turbo and hot, cold side, everything associated with that. I'm guessing it's going to be a longer video, but we'll see. But anyway, I'm Chris. Thanks for watching the Falcon Project on Calico's Garage. See you next time.